All right, good evening, everybody. All right, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Eric Addinger. How I got in time aliens in the Bible, people ask me where I even got the idea to start looking into these kinds of things. I've been a Christian my whole life, was blessed to grow up in the church. I actually grew up in this church. Started going obviously back in the late 80s when I was a young kid and was taught right out the gate, which is really nice. But then I attended Penn State University for college, went for the sciences and kinesiology, and while I was there, I found out, and I was a young, naive kid, surprise, surprise, there's not a lot of Christians at Penn State University. So, I mean, they're out there, but there weren't as many out there. And I was somebody that would like to talk about my faith, but I was also a scientist, like into the sciences, and was very big into evidence-based things. And I would get into these discussions with these guys, and we go into deep topics like dimensions. That's what got me into time, understanding time, and I'll talk a little bit about that tonight, and why it's important, and how we can show the science of time. It was already in the Bible, and God wrote about all that. And then, of course, it led me into aliens and a bunch of other strange topics. I'm going to cut myself off tonight at just time and aliens, but I have all kinds of interesting topics. So just to give you an idea, that's where that all came from. All right, let's see if I got, oops, maybe my clicker died on me here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm a fast talker, as you guys can already tell if you've never heard me talk. And I'll be going through some pretty wild topics pretty quickly because I don't want to keep you here till midnight, and you probably would be here till midnight if I slowed down. So if you have anything that just comes to your mind when I'm going through these slides, if I say something like Roswell and you want to ask a question about Roswell later, I'm going to be going a million miles an hour, but we can go back to Roswell or something like that if you want, or you have a question about angels or something like that. So just jot it down, and at the end, I'm really hoping to get through this quicker than usual as well, so you guys can kind of jump into discussion with me, ask any questions you might have. I hope I have the answer. I might not, and that's okay. Or Pastor Brad might have the answer as well. Or if you just want to add something that you've heard or you've seen as well that goes with these topics here. So first off, let's just get started. If you're like me and you're a Christian, you believe in the Bible and you believe the Bible to be 100% true. But what we have to admit is it's really weird. Some of the things we believe are very, very strange, like Moses right there in that picture. Moses splitting the Red Sea. We know that was God's power, but to think of that happening again, it kind of sounds bizarre. And if you told anybody that you think you could go down and split the Susquehanna River and water would go in the walls, it'd be a little weird, right? But we believe that happened. We believe that Mary had a baby as a virgin. That's scientifically impossible to the average world, but we know it happened because with God, all things are possible, and we'll find out he is outside of space and time, so the rules don't apply to him, and we see that in the Bible. And then, of course, my favorite one, Jesus rising from the dead. Isn't it weird that sometimes we hear about aliens and we think it's really weird, but then we tell people that we believe that a guy got up from the dead, like on his own, right, with power of God? So you have to understand that the Bible has some very weird, strange things if you're talking to a scientist or somebody who's a practical, logical kind of person. But we all know it's true, and there's so many proofs over throughout the Bible and prophecy that all these things actually happen, as bizarre as they might sound. So first off, we're going to talk about the science of time very quickly. And the reason I'm just going to talk about time in this subject is because it'll be very helpful to understand aliens as I've come to know them. So time is a physical dimension. Most people don't know that. And a lot of people will say, they want to sound really philosophical, and they'll say time is a man-made construct, and we split it into 60 intervals, but it's really nothing. It's not real. It's actually very real, and that's actually, how many of you have heard of Albert Einstein? Raise your hand if you heard of Albert Einstein. Yeah, he was big because he found out that time is relative, meaning it can be different for somebody else compared to me, right? And the Bible has actually already said, and you can skip to the bottom there, the Bible has said, a day to the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. And we used to just take that as a metaphor until 1915, and then 1935 he refined it, and the theory of relativity, that actually became science all of a sudden. So if you were a Christian before 1915, you got mocked to say that God in our time is different. But then all of a sudden science said that time is different to you and me based on gravity, acceleration, and velocities and things like that. We found out that black holes will actually slow down time, which literally means right now, if you went to a black hole out in the universe somewhere and you got close enough, the reason a black hole is a black hole, science tells us, is because light can't escape because it's pulling it in so fast. So light cannot escape. That's why it's a black hole. It's actually pulling on time itself, and space and time are unified. So you can't have space without time or time without space. So if space is stretchy, time must also be stretched. And the Bible's even told us, God can roll it up like a garment. It can wear out, things like that. But the reason I tell you that space and time is married, and you have to have this, because if I said, hey, meet me at Stonington Church, the first question you're going to say is when, right? If I said, hey, meet me here at 6 o'clock, you're going to say, where? That's because space and time, it's a space-time continuum. If you watch Back to the Future like I have, you're familiar with the space-time continuum. You don't want to travel back in time and ruin it all for the rest of us, right? That is science fiction. But you can time travel going forward, but that's a whole other topic, and that has the speed of light traveling. And I'm actually going to give you an example right here. So speed of light example. There is, so 4.5 light years away is Andromeda, okay? If I wanted to send, if there was you and me, and we were both, if I had a twin, let's say I had a twin. If I had a twin of myself, and I sent my clone twin to Andromeda at half the speed of light, I wouldn't send him at the speed of light because he'd burn up, because it's actually impossible physically. But I sent him at half the speed of light in a spaceship to Andromeda and back. It would have been 9 years to us, right? 4.5 years, or that's speed of light actually, 4.5 years out and 4.5 years back. That's 9 years. At the speed of light, it would only be 30 days to them, which means when they got back, I would be 9 years older. I'd be in my mid-40s. They would only be 30 days older. And if you look this up, this is real science, by the way. This is called time dilation. And this is what Einstein proved. So it's very fundamental to understand that time and space are all physical, including this time, and that if we had enough gravity in this room right now, we could slow down time. If I could turn this into a gravity box, we could slow down time where we walked out and it would be 100 years in the future. But to us, we would have just been in here for this conversation. That's actually real science, and you can go look that up. That's called time dilation. Now I'm going to talk about God and time, because this is where I'm really coming from. Space and time are creation. If space is creation, that must mean time is creation, and we are living in space and time, okay? But God, it says in the Bible, inhabits eternity. Now, when I was younger, I used to think, about heaven and what's it going to be like for being there for 1 billion years or 100 billion years. And then I got to Penn State and realized I was thinking about it all wrong. Eternity is not time. Eternity is outside of time. Time is a physical dimension. And if God was in time, he'd be able to be pulled and stretched just like we are. And God is outside of this, and he created all of this. So I show the geometry of eternity. Dr. Misler made a really great graph on this here. So you can imagine God is up there on the infinity scale, which it goes forever and ever, it's eternity. And then we are in that T for time. That's a timeline there, right? And we know there's past, the time before you got here, there's the present here, and there's the future to where we're going. Think of it as a traffic helicopter. If we were in traffic right now, and we were in New York City, and we were in bumper-to-bumper traffic, and we need to know which side road to take to get out of this traffic, okay? We need to know which side road to take. You're not going to ask me in traffic, and I'm not going to ask you, because you can't see in front of where we're going. You can't see in front of anybody or behind. But we'll ask a traffic helicopter because they have accessed a higher dimension, okay? They are in the third dimension. When you drive, you actually only drive in 2 dimensions. You can go forward or backward or left or right. It would be really nice if our cars could go up or down because we could fly over traffic, right? But only if you have a helicopter can you access the third dimension. So this helicopter, the traffic helicopter, is accessing a higher dimension than we exist in, and that's why we can rely on the helicopter to tell us what's coming ahead and what happened in the past. And this is exactly how it is with God. This is how prophecy works. It blows our mind, but scientifically it would make sense. It blows our mind. How did God say all these prophecies? How did he name Josiah and Cyrus in the Old Testament before they ever showed up? And then they show up exactly when they said? How did he say that the 69 weeks would end and the Messiah would show up and Jesus arrives exactly on that day? Other than if he could see the future already, which is true. He is outside of time. So I tell people the future to God is just like history to us. The history and the future are all the same to God. And could you imagine if I just told you what was going to happen in the next week or two, and I told you every specific thing that happened, and it unfolded that way? You'd say, there's something up with you. You have some access to information I don't have access to. And that's how it is with God. Now, understanding higher dimensions, this is going to help us with understanding the whole concept of aliens. So again, if you're a higher being like God, you are outside of space and time. If you are a spirit being, if you're in the invisible world of the spirits, and the spirits, which we know, cannot be physically touched or pulled on, right? Spirits are non-physical, which means they would have to be outside of our temporal dimension, the 4th dimension of time, right? So they also do not live in our world. However, we know that God, through Jesus Christ, and we know that angels, we're going to get to that in the past, have dipped down into our reality before, taken on physical form, but we know they can also return. Jesus Christ, we know, is back up into the spirit realm. He dipped down, and he's back up there, right? So this kind of gives you the idea of dipping in and out. Think of this. I have a paper and a fingers on a hand analogy I use. Imagine these groups of people that just lived on a 2-dimensional piece of paper. And I had ink on my fingers, but I'm in the higher dimension. I'm not on the paper yet. But when I put my fingers down on that paper, and I have these 3 fingers, I put my 3 fingers down, it now all of a sudden looked like 3 objects appeared out of nowhere in their world. And when I lift my hand up, I disappeared like that. But I didn't stop existing. I just accessed the higher third dimension that they cannot access. They only have the flat piece of paper land. They call it flatlanders. It's like a flatlander theory. So it shows you what higher dimensions can do and why things can seem the way they are. Just like if you dip your toe in water, all of a sudden you enter a fish's world, right? A fish can't see what we're doing right here, right now. But if we walk down to the river or a lake or a pond and we put our feet in, now all of a sudden we've entered their dimension, but we'll dip out. And I actually kind of have a funny analogy here to kind of explain that. It's going to lead right into aliens. So I have a little cartoon here, and it's this fish telling his other fish friends about this alien encounter he had. He says, I felt a stabbing pain in my lip. I felt myself being pulled up by the alien force. I got sucked up out of the water. I couldn't breathe. The light was so bright. I got probed and measured and examined, and then I was released back into the water. It was so weird. And his friends go, there's no such thing as fishermen. There's no such thing. I'm sick of these hoaxes and these UFOs and these unidentified floating objects. They're just not real, right? But it sounds crazy, but the fish would be right. And the fish would be just telling them, listen, there are beings above our dimensions that we live in, above this world, this water world. And I'm telling you, they can dip in and get right out. I'm telling you it's real, and they took me, right? So that's a little bit of a joke there, but it's the same exact scientific concept. And that's how it is. We're going to find out with us. So let's just jump right into it because I want to give us time to talk about this. Are the aliens that we hear about, we just know there's alien reports. Everybody knows it in here. That's why you guys showed up. You know, you've heard, you've seen the news, you've seen the weird sci-fi films, and a lot of them are Hollywood. They're not, always accurate. But we need to define alien. What is an alien? An alien, if we define it as this, a being not from our world, that does not live from our world, from somewhere else, then aliens are real. If we are saying that aliens are things from other planets or intergalactic, they are not real, okay? Biblically, we are the only physical things living in this universe, which is bizarre, and God made the universe so large, it shows how small we are, but there are no other planetary beings. However, I believe there are interdimensional beings. And you'll find some secular scientists that will actually agree with me, and we'll talk about some of them there. But if you're talking about interdimensional beings, beings that can inhabit the higher dimensions, which science says we probably have at least 10 dimensions, and so they believe, scientists will tell you, the theoretical physicists, that there are higher dimensions that we cannot perceive. So I believe there are beings from there, and it's exactly, we're going to find out what the Bible has been telling us since day one. It's why there's a show called Ancient Aliens that you guys all heard of, and don't believe everything you hear on there either. But there's some truth to it, because the aliens have been showing up for a long time, and the Bible's told us that. There's aliens in the Bible, and the Bible was not written today. It was written thousands of years ago, right? But I believe that UFOs that we hear and talk about can appear and disappear and dip in and dip out, just like I talked about that fish story. So I believe there are beings, and I'm sure you guys do too. If I would have asked you in the beginning how many of you believed in aliens, I wouldn't have expected many hands to go up. But then I might have asked you how many of you guys believe in angels or demons, and a lot more hands would have gone up. And technically they're alien when you define it in this way that we define it here. Alien is a being that does not live in our domain, which is the case here. So UFO sightings are on the rise, and I'm sure many of you have noticed they're in the news pretty regularly. All you have to do is go to Google, type in alien or UFO, click news, and you'll see some article within the last month, probably the last week, maybe even the last day that came out, and you can see it's actually been increasing, and I'm going to tell you that I believe there is a biblical reason as to why UFO sightings have been increasing, and I have some stats on that later. But you can see we're up to thousands a year that are just unexplained. There's a lot of them are explained. Now, we know there are hoaxes, and there's even been disinformation programs where people will purposely create a hoax to get people to stop believing in it. But we do know, and the governments are now coming out and telling us that there are these things that are happening that we cannot explain, and we're scientifically recording them. And I do believe cell phones and cameras and videos have added to the heightened, I couldn't have seen something in the past and sent it to you on a cell phone back in 1970, but today I can, so that would also play into it. But I do believe things are getting a little more frequent. But let's go to some specific examples, and I'm going to go in chronological order of just some big ones here. A lot of people don't know about this. Some people know about the band called the Foo Fighters, but they're actually named after the real things called Foo Fighters. Has anybody ever heard of World War II Foo Fighters here? Okay, some of you have, not many though. So Foo Fighters, this is a real thing. You can look, everything I'm talking about here, you can actually go look up yourself, and I encourage you, don't ever take my word for anything in the Bible or in science. Look it up yourself and come to your own conclusion. But during World War II, there were World War II veterans, now, if they're still alive, they would tell you this, that they would see, during World War II, the Foo Fighters referred to unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is what we call UFOs. They changed it to UAP to get rid of the stigma. They witnessed by pilots from both the Allied and the Axis powers, and these objects were often described as glowing orbs or balls, which we have some photos here, of light that seemed to follow aircraft, displaying extraordinary maneuverability and speeds. And it gets even weirder to where some of these craft actually had the swastika on them. So a lot of them actually started to believe that the Germans had this technology or they were working with aliens, and it gets bizarre, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But just think about Hitler and who his enemies were, and it'll make a lot of sense to you. All right, Roswell. This one I don't even talk about too much. Roswell is like the epitome of aliens, right? You can't drive out to Nevada or out southwest and go to Roswell without seeing alien stuff and the alien and all that. But we know that this is where it got really big, right? 1947 is when it was considered to be mainstream in America and around the world. And I don't have to go too much into that one. This next one's one of my favorite ones. How many of you guys have seen Independence Day with Will Smith? Yeah, that actually has a real basis. It was based off of this concept, which actually really happened. Again, fact check everything I tell you. In July of 1952, a series of UFO sightings over Washington, D.C., including near the White House and the U.S. Capitol, captured significant public and media attention, leading to intense speculation and a subsequent investigation by the U.S. Air Force. That really happened, and it was multiple nights, and there's a lot of speculation on what that was. But in 1952, even the White House and the president was the one that called the Air Force and said, there's something weird going on. You need to check it out. We have Betty and Barney Hill, 1961. A lot of people are familiar with this one as well. It was one of the most best documented alien abductions that we hear of. So they were a married couple from New Hampshire, and they had claimed to have been abducted by aliens, and not only that, but subjected to medical examinations aboard a UFO. And it's probably small for you guys there, but that's Barney right there actually drawing out what they had seen. And the weird thing here is they used hypnosis and regression, and they separated the husband and the wife, and they came up with the same exact story, which is bizarre if it were made up. Okay, so that's another popular one. Here's the Pennsylvania Roswell. How many people are familiar with the Kecksburg incident? Anybody here familiar with Kecksburg? So Pennsylvania actually had its own UFO, really popular sighting. If you're in the UFO community, you'll find out that in 1965, residents of Kecksburg reported seeing a fireball crash into the woods with speculation of a possible UFO crash and a government cover-up. And if you go to Kecksburg, they actually have that structure right there, which they said was what had landed in the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. So we had our own Roswell back in 65, about 18 years after the actual Roswell event. There's a guy named Travis Walton. Some people are familiar with him. In 1975, he was a forestry worker that alleged that he was abducted by aliens while working in Arizona's Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. They actually made movies. I think it's called Fire in the Sky. If you watch an old movie called Fire in the Sky, it's all about Travis Walton. He's still alive today. He still tells the same story, and he swears by everything he says. Then we have Rendlesham Forest in 1980. This one happened in England. But there were Americans over there. Military personnel stationed at RAF Bentwaters in UK reported encounters with a UFO over a 2-night period. These ones always interest me, that the UFOs that they spot show up multiple times. And this is where we get the ideas of aliens and UFOs showing up in the forest and in woods. This is one of the biggest examples of that Rendlesham Forest. So like when you watch E.T., E.T. happened 2 years after this happened. Might have been inspired about when his thing lands in woods up, where's it, L.A. or whatever. It probably is encouraged by this Rendlesham. Here's the most disturbing one to me of all, and I was telling some people earlier. This one's disturbing and just really bizarre. It's the Ariel School in Zimbabwe in 1994. Just look this one up. What I have included here are actual drawings from children within that week when they went and questioned them. They said, draw what you see. And these are the drawings, and they had them in separate rooms again, and all the kids were drawing very similar things. There were 62 students. There was not just one or two. 62 children that were students in Zimbabwe saw it in broad daylight while out on the playground. They claimed to have witnessed a UFO and communicated with its occupants. And the aliens, you'll find out, are always there to deliver some ominous message, and we'll find out why. But they were there to deliver a message to the kids, and the kids went and told all the teachers. Some adults saw it, and they asked the kids to draw it. And these are actual drawings that they drew from that event. Anybody familiar with the Phoenix Lights in 1997? Yeah, this one's a little bit more. Now we're starting to get a little bit more recent. This one's bizarre. They say something like the size of a football field. A flying V went over, and I think it was for about over an hour. I want to say like an hour and a half in Phoenix. It's very well documented. You can watch. They have the whole documentaries just on this alone. You can go find, but thousands of witnesses. And again, this is always interesting. If it was just me and my friend, that's one thing. But when there's thousands of people in Phoenix, Arizona, say, "I saw this thing. It was flying like a V. It hovered, and it didn't just zip by. It hovered over the city for about an hour and a half, I think it was, in a triangular formulation, and really blew people's minds. So that one is another local one. Now we're getting caught up to the Tic Tac UFO. Has anybody heard of the Tic Tac UFO in 2004? This is what started to break it a little bit more mainstream. It was recorded in 2004. The USS Nimitz carrier strike group's pilots observed an unusual object during training exercise off the coast of California. I believe it was San Diego. And the encounter was captured on infrared video by one of the FA-18F Super Hornet jets. The released footage shows the object swiftly changing directions and accelerating in a way that defies conventional aircraft capabilities. And this was a big one because we have it all documented. What you see there is just a clip. You can actually watch the full video of it, and it doesn't follow physics. And you'll find out a lot in these things. They'll come up and they'll turn at a 90-degree angle. That is not possible. There should be some kind of drift, or some inertia that carries it, and it doesn't. These things dip in, dip out. So some bizarre things happen, and the big thing here was that these are trained professionals in the military who saw this. So they're not just some dummies or some hoax people. These people do this for a living, and this is what they saw, and they caught it on radar, they caught it on camera, and you can go check that out. That is what started to bring out the phenomenon now of you're going to notice aliens are going to become more and more in the news, by the way. And again, I'll talk a little bit about later why, but this is one that really broke it into a little bit more of the mainstream. I didn't sound so crazy to my friends when I started talking about Tic Tac UFO. It started to come around then. Then there's this one. We're almost through them, but O'Hare International Airport back in 2006, those are real photos, 2 separate photos here. Several airport employees, which obviously they're always checking airspace, they witnessed and reported seeing a saucer-shaped object hovering over the tarmac at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. And those are 2 real photos of the actual event. And again, just not 1 or 2 random people carrying their luggage down the runway or anything like that. These were workers that worked in airports regularly, not just 1 or 2, several of them. And it was documented, and people started taking photos. So that's what happened. And this is the most recent one. Did anybody hear about this back in June? A couple weeks ago, a Vegas family called the police after aliens supposedly crashed in their backyard. Family members were recorded saying they saw an 8-foot person with big eyes that is, quote unquote, not human. And not only that, but police body camera footage also showed something falling from the sky. So it matched up. There's video. So the thing on the left is the police. That's police footage. And on the right is the people in their backyard that were claiming this. This literally just happened. This is very fresh. This is the most fresh example of a big phenomenon. And actually right now, it's actually kind of crazy. They actually have to have a security detail because people are trying to break into their property right now, just to get, evidence that they were there or whatever. But that's the most recent one, and I'm guessing it will not be the last one. But you can look that up as well, the Las Vegas incident. What about ancient aliens? I talked about ancient aliens and said it's been going on forever. I said the Bible said it's been going on forever, and all cultures have. So think about the Greek and Roman mythology. We talk about them having myths and not real, but you'll find out there's a lot of reality when you start studying the Bible and things that these other religions are actually not completely far-fetched as far as the gods go. You can take the word gods, make it aliens, or angels, make it demons. We use the word angels, but if you do a deeper study on spirits, you'll find out there are many different kinds. We even know Paul says there's thrones, powers, dominions. He didn't just say angels and stop there. There are different ranks of beings. An angel is actually a messenger. That's why Gabriel is always the messenger of the Messiah. Gabriel and Michael are the only 2 mentioned by name angels in the Bible, and they're always messengers of some respect. But there are other spiritual beings. And these religions would speak of gods, and they are usually sinful and imperfect, getting drunk and doing all these sinful things, which we know spirits can do. God can't do, but we do know there are some angels and other spirits that were evil and were fallen. But all cultures around the world, when you study this, speak of aliens or star people or the gods, and it's a really big phenomenon. Back then, they didn't have cell phones, so why did all these cultures see all of these beings and talk about them? The Tulip Papyrus is from 1440 BC, and it speaks back then of fiery discs in the sky that actually panicked all the Egyptian people. There's ancient Indian texts about what's called the Vimyanas, And they were flying vehicles that the gods used when they'd come down to Earth to visit their people in India. And then in 1561, just so people were just starting to colonize America, it was still very early on, in Nuremberg, there was an aerial battle in the sky with crafts in combat. So think about that. 1561, I mean, the Wright brothers were definitely not around then, so there was no airplanes, right? There's no helicopters, there's no rockets. And in 1561, people in Nuremberg watched a battle happen in the sky as if we were watching our Air Force fight with somebody else. And these are just a few examples. You can find out in Japan, a lot of weird things happened. There was a time period where things went on there. In Belgium, there was a thing called the Belgium Wave. So you'll find out when you go back into ancient times or cultures today, there are these alien sightings or other beings and other crafts. And those two images there are very old ancient images or paintings or sketches into walls. And it won't take you long to go look at cave paintings that have some kind of discs. And it seems weird, but it seems to line up with what a lot of people see today. Now let's talk about the common alien effects. So from these visits or these encounters, these are the most common things that we see over and over and over. One, UFO suddenly appearing and then suddenly disappearing. Out of nowhere, it sits in the sky, it zips somewhere and just poof, disappears, right? That's a common one. I talked about how a common thing is they don't follow normal physics. They can take 90-degree turns, like I said, and do other things, materialize and dematerialize, things that physicists will tell you should not be able to happen, and we have visual evidence of it happening. Abductions. This is the weird one. Abductions. Like, it's one thing to see a UFO, and they have all those, alien encounter, the first kind, second kind, third kind, all those things. Abductions takes you to the next level when you're abducted. So if you see a UFO, that's, I think, the first kind. If you actually see the beings yourself, that's the second kind. I think if you're abducted, that's the third kind, I think. And there's like all the way up to fifth kinds. But abductions happen pretty regularly, we saw. Travis Walton was one example. Benny and Barney Hill, or Barney and Billy Hill were another one. But it's common to hear about abductions. And what's going on, we don't know for sure, but we know that these things are happening. One of the weirdest ones, I had to put it up here, sexual encounters. It's really, really bizarre. But if you do research on this stuff, the alien community, the UFO community says this is a regular thing. And there's women that'll tell you about these hybrid programs. It's not hard. If you look this stuff up, it sounds bizarre. Just look up the hybrid theory, the hybrid programs. And there are people on this earth today that will tell you they have babies on this earth or in the other dimensions or whatever, but they have babies that are half them and half alien, and some alien had children. It's usually women, by the way, which that'll lead us into some biblical things, but usually women saying that they were pregnant, they were impregnated on some spaceship or some abduction or some encounter in their bedroom, and they have children that are half human and half alien. That's very common. There's also another thing where they have psychic communication or thought communication, where they don't even have to talk to you. They can think things and project them into your heads. That's another common one. And a big thing is they communicate with what people call psychics. All right, and then you have to understand psychics are real. A lot of people in the church will tell you psychics are fake and magic is fake, but that is completely opposite of what the scriptures say. If you go back to Balaam and all those kind of things, and the medium, the witch of Endor, when Saul goes to the witch of Endor, he took it very seriously, and the spirit of Samuel comes up. So that's biblical. So these people are real. Doesn't mean good things are happening. But the aliens seem to love to communicate with our psychic people, the people that claim to be psychics. And the most common one is an alien group. They'll call themselves the Pleiadians. And these aliens call themselves the Pleiadians, and they say that they're here among us. And another thing they tell them is, don't worry, the time is coming. We'll reveal ourselves. This is the message that you'll get from the alien people. They'll say they are going to reveal themselves, but not before they remove the low vibrating people from the earth. So they say they'll wait to come out of hiding, but right now there's people that are at lower frequencies, and for us to have world peace, we got to remove all these people, usually religious people, usually church people. We are usually categorized as low vibrating people, and you'll see why all this is going on. But these are common things. This is not just in one case or two cases. These are common things that we see when people report alien UFOs or alien encounters. Now, I'm a science guy, so I had to ask myself this before when I even started to dive into this stuff years and years ago. Do the scientists even believe this stuff, or is this just a hoax? And it gets pretty amazing when you find out a lot of scientists believe this. Here's two prominent ones. Dr. Jacques Vallée, you can look up, he wrote a lot extensively on this. He's a computer scientist, so he's coding, programming. And he believes that these alien encounters are real, and he believes, just like I do, that these aren't aliens on other planets. You're not going to find them if you look on Mars. You're not going to find aliens. But he believes that they are interdimensional. and he believes that they have psychic abilities. And he believes that sometimes when you see them, it might even be a projection into your mind, to whereas, and this is a biblical thing we see as well, where maybe you and I would see this thing, but people around us might not see it. He believes that they could be psychic projections and that they are interdimensional when they do pop in and out of our world. And one of the really, really amazing ones, Dr. John E. Mack. He is a Harvard man. He's a Harvard scientist, and he is actually a Pulitzer Prize winner. So this is just not some guy, some quack from some random community college out west that I picked. This is a guy from Harvard that we all know. He won a Pulitzer Prize. He studied alien abduction cases. That's what he did. He basically talked to the people that had said they'd been abducted by aliens, brought them in independently, didn't introduce them to each other. And he wouldn't go as far as to say what exactly was happening. But what he said is he concluded that it was a real phenomenon. It's taking place. We need to take it seriously. There is something seriously happening. And he's from Harvard. He won a Pulitzer Prize. And he won't say like Dr. Jacques Vallée of what they actually are, but he's saying something is happening. He won't say if it's actually physical, if it's actually in these people's minds, but he said, I have studied case and case and case, and they are all factual. It all checks out of what they're telling me. So now the big important thing, what does the Bible actually say about aliens? And people are shocked when I tell them, like I've been telling you, that alien encounters are in the Bible. Both good and bad ones, all right? Both good ones and bad ones. Although we're going to find out a lot today, a lot of them are usually bad rather than good. The Bible refers to these beings, like I said, as angels, demons, sometimes princes, and sometimes gods. And you got to remember, the Gentile nations, if you're not a nation of Israel, you have a Gentile god, the Bible says, that is wreaking havoc, and it could maybe have to do with some alien, some other beings, right? So we all at least believe in spirits. Some people get freaked out about the word gods, although it's written right in there. Elohim is not really a name, so to speak, as much as a being. But it is in the Bible there. But if you have to just tell yourself angels to help you, you can just say angels. You believe in angels, you believe in spirits. But they're usually labeled with these titles. And these beings in the Bible can dip into and out of our world, just like that fish thing. Just like I've been talking about these alien UFOs dipping in, dipping out. They can dip in and out of the spirit world and think in those dimensions again. If they are outside of space and time, they could come into space and time, and they could go back out of space and time. So let's go with our first evidence in the Bible. Let's get to the stuff you guys are aware of. Enoch. Everybody knows Enoch, right? It's one of the coolest stories in the Bible. Genesis 5, as well as Hebrews, tells us, by faith Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. And he was not found because God had taken him. Now, before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. Somebody like me says this is a rapture-esque kind of a story before it happened, patterns. And if you talk with me, I really believe the ancient rabbis believed in patterns, that you see patterns over and over and over, just like a song has a pattern. The verses are different, but it's the same melody. Space and time operates the same way. God's creation operates the same way. And this is one of the first patterns, but this is the first abduction you'll actually find in the Bible. But again, this is a good one, a really good abduction. Enoch was abducted, you could say, by God. And again, by definition, we're not saying he got brought up on a spaceship. It does not say that. But he was taken from this world. That's what an abduction is, to be taken, right? So Enoch is the first scriptural evidence of abductions. Then we have one of the weirdest ones of all, people really get bothered by, but it's just in Scripture over and over, and the ancient Jews believe this. Genesis 6, and the Jews believed that the flood, it was caused by sin, but it wasn't that Noah's time period was necessarily that much worse with sin, although it was terrible than us, but they had the first alien invasion. It says in Genesis 6, when man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, in Hebrew that's Bnei Ha-Elohim, sons of God, saw that the daughters of man were attractive. So these people that obviously weren't man, right? Why would it just say these sons of God were attracted to daughters of man? Why don't it just say guys were attracted to girls, right? It doesn't say that. It says Bnei Ha-Elohim. Then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever, for he is flesh, his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God, which we can call angels, or fallen angels, what we usually call them, came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. Hybrid project. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. And we believe, and the ancients believe, that this was an attack on the human bloodline. Remember that Jesus, the promise of the coming Messiah, was that he'd redeem humanity. But one of Satan's strategies, he has a bunch of stratagems, and one of his strategies was to attack the human bloodline. So that if they would continue, if these spirits would leave and continue to mingle with humans, the thought was that over time the bloodline would get so muddied that God would either have to break his promise or save the demons and the angels too. And that was not scriptural, and God keeps his promises. But those hybrid projects that sounded so insane to us when we hear people talk about them, it's a biblical concept that goes back to the first book of the Bible, Genesis 6, and the ancient people, if you read the writings, they believe that's why the flood happened, to wipe them out. And by the way, this is where demonology comes from. Demons, the ancient people, didn't believe they were bad angels. The demons were the disembodied spirits of the children, the Nephilim, the giants. So when the flood went and killed them, they couldn't go back to heaven because they were not an angel, and they couldn't go down to Sheol because they were not a human. So they're stuck here. It's why you'll never see an angel try to possess somebody's body, but a demon will, because they lost their body in the flood, is the belief. Abraham, we're still in the book of Genesis, by the way. We're in the first book of the Bible, and we have another alien encounter here where three men appear out of nowhere. We know one to be the Lord, the angel of the Lord, Yahweh, pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, shows up along with two other angels. This is right before the famous Sodom and Gomorrah, and you see those two men, quote-unquote men. We know they weren't really men later on, but let's see what Genesis 18 says. It says, "And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes," which shows something important is about to happen, "and looked, and behold, three men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, 'O Lord, if I had found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant.'" You could just miss this and say, oh, wow, three guys showed up to Abraham. But if you go on to the story and you study that deeper, why would Abraham bow to them? And we learn more and more about what went on there. He takes up Abraham. The Lord has a conversation with Abraham in somewhat of flesh. Now, he probably didn't look like Jesus Christ when he showed up later on, but he could show up in some form. And we'll learn about polymorphism and shape-shifting later. But we see that happen here, and it's very commonly believed these were angelic beings. And again, this is the first book of the Bible. Now let's go to the book of Judges, one that people are not as familiar with. Judges chapter 13, just write that one down if you want to look at it later. Samson's parents, this is the chapter before Samson's born. We learn about his birth, but something weird happens. Manoah, that's Samson's dad, and we don't know what his mom's name was, but it's Manoah's wife. Hear what happens in Judges 13. "Then the woman came and told her husband, 'A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God, very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, 'O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are to do with the child who would be born,'" which is Samson, by the way. "And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, 'Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me.'" So if you go back and look at that, we begin to believe that was Jesus Christ, pre-incarnate, showing up, giving the Nazarite vow of what was going to have to happen, what Samson was going to have to do. And it's really interesting, at the end of that story, he disappears. He'll disappear right in front of their eyes in somewhat of a burnt offering, and they think they're going to die because they saw the Lord. And then Manoah's wife says, "Well, why would we die if he showed up here and give us this? Why would he kill us?" Right? And we see, Jesus Christ right there in the story. He's all in the Old Testament, and it makes sense, by the way. If it's the first time you're hearing this, Jesus Christ is all throughout the Old Testament because he was there in the beginning. He created the whole thing. I don't know why he would disappear for half the book and come back, right? So he's been there the whole time. He's in there. And read Judges 13. If you never read it on your own before, read that. Take it seriously. I think you'll figure out there's something weird going on here. And I would say if I was sitting in a field and some being showed up that looked like something like what is the appearance of the angel of God, I'd say that was a being not from this world. And it was probably pre-incarnate Jesus Christ in, again, another form. One of my favorites. Now, the occult loves to run with this one. This is the one people don't believe in the Bible will claim. They still love the story of Ezekiel. They might not believe in the Bible, but they love this story of the wheel of Ezekiel. This is the first recorded UFO encounter by definition in the Bible. So Ezekiel 1, verses 15 through 21 says, "Now as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one for each of the four of them. As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl." That's a green color, by the way. These are all colors. And by the way, in the Bible, I always think it's really interesting when they don't say green or blue, they'll say beryl and sapphire. That's usually because they can't explain these colors, and the best way they can explain these hyperdimensional colors is through gems, because gems look very beautiful. Even if you go to when you get to Revelation, you get to things about the Lord and the throne, they'll never explain them in colors. They'll always be in gemstones. And probably we believe because how could you explain the colors you're seeing? Because they don't even exist where we're at, right? So he does his best job of saying, hey, it was like these green stones that we see. It was like this crazy color. The four had the same likeness. Their appearance and construction were a wheel within a wheel. He's talking about four beings in the sky in these wheels. The rims were tall and awesome. The rims of all four were full of eyes all around. Now, again, remember, he can't say they look like LED lights, right? You can't say they look like LED lights because it didn't exist. So a lot of times in the Bible, you'll see them call them chariots. They'll say things like eyes, use colors of stone to explain things because, how could you explain an airplane back in biblical times? You couldn't just say it had an engine like a 747. You'd have to say something. It was like a giant bird. You'd have to use these terms that we see, like when Elijah, the chariot of which we'll get to in a little bit here. So you can see here, it says, wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went. The wheels rose among them. The spirits of living creatures in the wheels, and when those went, they went. When they stood, these stood. And you can see here, they were in the wheels. Now, this is a rare UFO encounter, and this is a godly one. And I'll tell you, it is not very common for a UFO encounter to be godly. This is a very rare example. So if you see something in the sky, don't count on it being God. He's written the Bible. He wrote everything you need to know. He's not going to send you a new idea. And Galatians even says if an angel comes down, by the way, think about this. Galatians first chapter says, hey, by the way, there's no other gospel than the one we're telling you about. And if some angel came down right now and told you something else, they should be cursed. Curse them. Don't believe them. So it leaves the door open possibility that there could be spirits that will lie to you about the truth, which I think is what's happening around us, around the world. Elijah, we're almost through all my examples here biblically. We're about to wrap up here, but Elijah, here's another godly UFO abduction it's a UFO and an abduction all in one. And as they still went on and talked, behold, chariots of fire, remember, what else could you call them other than chariots? They didn't have the technology like we have today of spaceship or anything. Chariots of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven, and Elisha saw it, which is pretty cool because remember, not everybody saw it, and that was the big thing if he would see it or not. He saw it, so that's that whole psychic thing again. He saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen, and he saw him no more. Then he took hold of his own clothes and tore them in two pieces, and he took up the cloak of Elijah that had fallen from him, and went back down and stood on the bank of the Jordan. So we even see Elijah gets taken away, another form of a rapture, we say forcefully taken by God, another abduction, right? Enoch was abducted. You can say Elijah was abducted, so to speak. And remember, we're using these terms loosely, biblically applied. I'm just trying to show you the comparisons here. But this is a more godly version. There's not many godly examples other than the ones that we see in the Bible here. But we can see that something happened and the Bible says so. And then this one's controversial. Some people get really riled up about this one, but could this be a godly UFO? And I'm not saying it is or isn't, but let's just think about this here. How many of you guys go outside and look at the stars and you see the stars move over people's houses and then slide back over and come down? You don't really see that. But let's read what happened in Matthew 2. And it was to show, again, this is a godly example, by the way, and this wouldn't be a bad one if this were the case. If it's a star, it's a star, but the evidence here we're going to read, it doesn't sound like the stars I'm used to. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained for them what time the star had appeared. Now, maybe there was clouds blocking it. Hey, what time did you see the car? Maybe, but then it gets weirder. He sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child. When you found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way. Listen to this. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. It seems like there's this one star, not like the other ones, that's moving around and hovering around in the skies, leading them to a destination. I'm telling you, I don't know about you. You can use stars for navigation out in ships, but they usually don't lead you to countries or lead you to other places. And I don't think this is maybe a UFO. It might have been a star-like thing, but it seems that this star acted very differently than other ones. And again, another godly example. Is it a UFO? Is it? I don't know. It could have been a real star. But the attributes we see, if you just stop for a second and you think about it and you say, I don't really see Polaris shifting around the sky too much, other than when I know the Earth's rotating and you can see all the other stars go with it. But I never see any stars break away and move around anywhere else, right? So we might even say the Star of Bethlehem might not have been your average star. Let's at least just say that. And one of my favorite ones, you guys are in the alien story yourselves. Hebrews 13:2, one of my favorite ones. You could have seen an alien already in your lifetime and maybe not even know it. These are modern-day alien encounters, and the Bible talked about this. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. That's a good thing, but why? For thereby some have entertained angels or spirits unaware of it. And that's, we shouldn't hope that, there's angels all around us. We should always just be treating people good. But it says why? Because you don't even know if they were human or not. What do you mean I don't know if they're human? I thought angels had 6 eyes and wings all over the place. I would have recognized the angel, right? No. It seems they can shift shapes and they can appear as humans and somewhat test you to see how your hospitality skills are, right? So next time you're going down the street and I ask you for a piece of pizza, you might not give it to me because you know I'm not an alien or an angel, but somebody down the street you might think twice about because maybe they're an angel, right? So, but just think about that for a second. And again, think about these examples I've been giving you of godly examples. They're very rare, and the other ones that we're going to see in modern time today are not godly usually. And the reason I'm telling you is this, because when we encounter the good ones, this is the only really good example I can see of what we might encounter a good alien, what you'd say a good godly angel, and when we encounter them, they don't even tell us. You notice that? They're not going to tell you. They're not going to say, hey, you failed the test. I was an alien. I was an angel. You passed. You failed. They're not going to say that. They're going to appear as a human in disguise. So if something's showing up to you and giving themselves a different identity, it's probably not a godly one, because the godly ones don't seem to do it. They seem to do it incognito, just as a test. So God, whatever it may mean, just see how hospitable you're being, right? But it seems to be here that you and I could have encountered angels or quote-unquote aliens, not in this world, if you're going to be loose with your language here, and not even known it, so they can appear like humans. So if you've encountered a good alien, you will never know it. If it's a good angel, you won't know it, most likely. If they let you know that they're an alien, I would head for the hills. I would head for the hills. All right, so we're going to wrap up and give some time to ask questions here in a little bit. But let's just look at the biblical alien evidence again. There have been many godly examples of alien encounters, like I showed you. Again, alien, quote unquote. But Genesis 6 definitely proved that evil spirits can encounter humans too. And Genesis 6 was the angels that Jude says, left their first estate, left their home. And these are the ones that are probably still punished in the chains of gloomy darkness, the Bible talks about, in Peter as well. So we know that they encountered them and they paid the price. They were bad, so it can be good or bad. And we have from the biblical evidence I presented, the good ones will go incognito. The bad ones are probably going to deceive you. And it shouldn't surprise you, because Satan is the enemy. He is the author of lies and the author of deception, and that's his whole end game. But the evil spirits are always counterfeits, we'll find out. You can actually look at Satan's script, and it's exactly God's script, but just the counterfeit version. If you read into the end times, there's going to be an evil trinity. A lot of you call him the false prophet, the beast, and then Satan himself. So when you think about this, he's always counterfeiting, always trying to manipulate and deceive people from the truth, is what we're seeing here. And he will continue to be a counterfeit until the final days. And if you start to think about it really strange, the Antichrist birth, possibly, this is, again, if you guys disagree with anything I say, that's completely okay. It doesn't mean that you're not saved or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys these ideas that there's a possibility, if Satan is the counterfeit of Christ, if he's going to counterfeit God the Father, he would probably have a virgin birth as well, right? And have we ever seen virgin births before in the Bible? Yep, we saw Jesus, but we saw virgin birth. We saw different kinds of births before that. We saw the hybrid project in Genesis 6, right? So it's not out of the question for Satan to have a child with a human woman on earth today, to be the spawn of Satan. This is where the term spawn of Satan comes from, by the way. He would have a real child that would be what he'll call fully God and fully man. It'll be a mockery of Jesus, and that's why he'll be able to get up. We see, and he'll get up from the dead after a fatal blow, possibly, when you read into eschatology. But I'm just putting that out there. It might not be completely out of the question. Some of these weird things that happen will happen in the future. So just consider, at least let it rattle around in your mind. One of the things, the reason I'm saying that there's deception and it's possible that these aliens that we see are not green men. So again, when you hear about aliens, the most common ones, they'll be grays or greens, sometimes the reptilians. That's like the conspiracy theories. Love that one. They might be true, by the way. Who knows? But the reptilians, there's very different species and varieties of these aliens. But I don't believe there's actually reptiles out there. I don't believe there's thin gray people. I think they are shape-shifting. I believe they are polymorphic, meaning taking on more than one form. And the Bible seems to indicate that. So I have a picture of what people consider on the right a biblical angel. And again, I don't really think it has wings and eyes like we say it does. Again, we're trying to make sense when the biblical writers are writing. They're trying to make sense of what they're seeing, and they can't even get it. They just try their best. But if I saw that thing, I'd be terrified too, and I would recognize it. But they can shift shape because the one in the middle looks like a human, and I'd imagine the angels in Genesis 6 probably looked like that. I don't think any women on earth were trying to marry that thing on the right? I don't think so. I don't think they're having kids with that thing, right? I wouldn't want my kid to have 6 wings, I'll tell you that. So you can see they shapeshift there, and that thing on the left is more close to what people will say they see today. So is it much different, what's going on today, than what went on in the past? I think there's a lot of deception. I think there's a lot of shapeshifting going on. And if you want to get technical, Jesus was a shapeshifter. Just think about that. I talked about when he showed up to Abraham, pre-incarnate, when he showed up to Samson's parents, he probably did not look like what he did. he showed up and was mistaken as the gardener by some of the people that knew him the best. I'm sorry, but if you guys are my friends and you guys knew me and you thought I was the gardener, you didn't recognize me, I'd be upset. So you see me all the time. I didn't even shave my beard off. You should recognize me, right? You should see me. So Jesus was unidentified. The road to Emmaus, his friends were talking to him. The disciples were talking to him, and they didn't know until he broke bread at the table. Remember, that's when they found out later. But they're talking to him. They have no idea who he is. There's one example, and this is maybe a stretch for some people, but remember in the crowd when they were going to try to push Jesus off the cliff and they wanted to kill him? If you read the scripture, it says he just walked right through the crowd. Just walked right through the crowd out. There's a chance, people say, that he might have shapeshifted into a different, and this is conjecture, this is not in scripture per se, but some people read into it to say, how would you be, all of a sudden be a crowd trying to push you off the cliff, and you be able to walk through that crowd unscathed, right? And it's possible. It's not definitely that he did that, but there are other examples that Jesus has taken different physical identities. Because remember, even if you saw Jesus Christ, in the flesh 2,000 years ago, we know that we really didn't even see God as he was, right? That was him in human form, but Jesus is so much greater than us. His glorified body, he's able to do so much more than us. But it was the way that he's able to see us. Because remember, we can't see God in the way that God really is because we would die from our sin. Because we're still in our sin. We're not glorified beings, the Bible says. Just like if I can look at the sun and the sky and it gives us heat and stuff, but if I got too close to that thing, it would melt me. It would kill me. It's not good for me. It's actually everything on the earth. Think about that. Everything on the earth needs the sun to live. Every living creature needs light to live. Everything needs it, including us, plants, animals. But if you got too close to that without some kind of bubble between you, it would kill you. So things that are in your best interest can also kill you. It's a great analogy, and you'll find out a lot of times in nature, God has his code and his story written right into nature. So think of it like that. So even Jesus Christ in the flesh, the reason he was able to shape-shift is because he was coming in a lower form for us to be able to handle it, because in his full effect, until we're glorified, it's really dangerous for us, which is why Manoah and his wife in Judges 13 thought they were going to die, because they knew back in the Old Testament, if you saw God, there's a chance you're going to die, because we're all sinners and we're guilty. Now, increased UFO, let's think about this. So I want to add this in here. There have been increased UFO and alien sightings since the 1940s. Now, this is a biblical matter, I believe. So remember, those Nazi UFOs, that's when it really started, World War II, with those Foo Fighters in the early 1940s. If you study Adolf Hitler, he will tell you that he was communicating with aliens. He was very into the occult. All of his people were into the occult. They were communicating with other beings, which would maybe make sense why they're able to almost dominate the world with such a terrible plan, right? But they're able to do it. And who was Hitler's enemy? But the people of God, the promised people of Israel, who have promises to come back in the end times, which they did in 1948. Now you can say, well, how would the aliens or angels have known that Israel was going to come back in 1948? Well, there was a thing called the Balfour Declaration decades before that said that Great Britain was going to set aside land for Israel. And if you read the end times literally like I do, I know some people don't. Some people take it metaphorically or allegorically, but I take it very literally that Israel would come back. And by the way, if you read commentaries from the 1800s, there was even people that were like literalists. They were kind of maybe Israel's kind of a metaphor. They didn't believe Israel was coming back. This is wild that Israel became a nation in 1948 because they hadn't been one for millenniums, basically. So to think about all these things happening, UFO sightings happen all of a sudden in the 1940s, starts to pick up now. Israel is prophesied to return as a nation. They return in 1948. And now all of a sudden, governments and media of the world are slowly admitting to UFOs, or what they've now called unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs. And the reason they did that, again, because UFOs has a stigma when you say it. So you say UAPs, it's different. But it seems to be, this could be why Hitler wanted to wipe out Israel, and this could be why they're trying to deceive people, because the end is near. The Bible says when Israel came, that's like the budding of the fig tree. When it buds, you can tell the end is near. So this is a very big end time sign when Israel came back. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. So the evil spirits know the end is near. Remember, the spirits know the Bible actually better than I do, by the way. They've been around longer than I have. The spirits do not die. They've read the whole thing maybe billions of times, and maybe their reading is even different than what we do. But they know what it says, and I kind of think of this as like back when me and my brother would play each other in Madden football, and one of us was down 3 touchdowns with a minute left, and we just run out of bounds and go off sides and go off sides and go off sides. We knew we were going to lose the game, but we were just stalling because we were mad that we were going to lose, and we were just trying to make the other guy mad. Think of that's what Satan's doing. The enemies, the spirits actually read the book, and they know they lose in the end. They know it's inevitable, but they're kind of like, that person that's trying to be a jerk and just trying to waste time and stall. That's kind of what I believe they're doing here. But they knew that when Israel became a nation, it meant time was short, and they were going to use deception. This is the new plan, to use deception to attack the gospel message of Jesus Christ. I believe there's a chance this could be part of the strong delusion that it says that God is going to send. It talks about that in Thessalonians. And this could be part of the great deception. I already talked about the Antichrist could possibly have ties to an alien phenomenon. This is a belief, possibly, that when the rapture happens, if you believe in the rapture like I do, some people do not, and that's okay. You can still get into heaven either way, whether you believe or not, but I do believe there's a lot of evidence for it to happen, and that this would be a great way to explain away. How would you explain if millions of people just disappeared on Earth? How would you normalize it unless you said, hey, we've been seeing these aliens and these UFOs forever, and don't forget what the Pleiadians have been telling the psychics, is that they're going to remove the low-vibrating people. Once that happens, they'll come out and show themselves. So is it possible, this is all speculation and conjecture, is it possible that when God returns for the people that believe him, that are sealed with the Holy Spirit, that when he takes us, that the enemy already has a plan ready to enact, where they come out and say, all right, we were the aliens, by the way, I am God, and the Antichrist says, I have an alien father, and I have a human mother, and I'm half you, half them, and we're going to work together and unify the world under this one religion, which it says is going to happen, and we will follow me, and we finally got rid of all those evil people that made you follow those stupid rules, and that caused all those wars and crusades, and we're going to really fix things here. So could this be the disappearance explained away by the rapture? I personally believe it is, and I believe I have a little bit of biblical evidence, and again, you can disagree, and that's completely okay, but I believe it could be part of end times prophecy. Remember what Jesus says when they ask him, well, what will it be like? He says, as in the days of Noah. So we have to ask ourselves, will aliens or angels intermingle with humans again? Will angels or aliens disguise themselves as humans again like they did in Genesis 6? Will the spawn of Satan be a virgin birth counterfeit? That would be very similar to Genesis 6 that we see of these alien beings having children with humans. Could that be? What does it say in Matthew 24? Let's get his exact words, and I'll tell you why I think this could actually relate to the Genesis 6 story, the weird stuff, and not just that people are getting drunk and partying and sinning, because I think that's been going on since humanity's been here, basically. So Matthew 24, verses 37 and 38. For as were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, and then what? Marrying and giving in marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark, okay? So it says that, and you're like, okay, yep, they were getting drunk and having parties and getting married. And you're like, wait a minute, what, getting married? Getting married, why do you say getting married? Let's go back to the story of Noah. Where did it even talk about marrying? Oh, it talked about the sons of God thinking the human women were beautiful and marrying them. So think about that. Again, this could just be conjecture. I could be completely wrong. But if you go back and you look at the only time that the time of Noah was talking about marrying, it seems to be these angels who left their first estate marrying human women. And it could be possibly part of the end times. I'm one of the few people that believe the aliens are among us, right? But again, I say that to my secular friends, and then I explain what I actually mean, like I just did to you guys. I don't believe they're from Mars or an intergalactic planet. But I believe what's happening today, and it's very well possible, again, you can believe it if you want or do not believe it, it's very well possible that the Antichrist could be a child right here that was born to some human woman that's on this earth right now. If you follow these scriptural patterns, it is actually biblically possible that there's a human right now that just gave birth somewhere, whether today, decades ago maybe. There's a chance he'll probably be in his 30s like Jesus was, because if he's a counterfeit, he'd probably be around 30 years old when he shows himself, I would imagine, if he's a complete counterfeit. So there is a chance. Maybe he's not born yet. Maybe there's some, maybe my literal intake of all this is wrong, and this is all metaphor, I don't know. But there seems to be a lot of scriptural evidence that this actually could be the case. And although they're not green men, and they're not from other planets, there could be angels or spirits, whatever you want to call them, messing with humanity even today. And there is a chance that when you hear these people talk about aliens and abductions and being impregnated by aliens, it's possible. If you look at Genesis 6, it's possible. I'm just saying it's not true. Don't ever say it's completely true. But it is very possible biblically that this would be happening if in the days of Noah were noted. It starts right out the gate, Genesis 6, and it runs right into the flood. If it started out with angels coming down, dipping into the dimensions that we live in, having children with humans, not just one of them did, a bunch of them, it says they were all marrying. That's where the Nephilim came from. And there's a chance there's new Nephilim being born. And it does say back in Genesis that the Nephilim were there and thereafter as well. So it does talk about after the flood, there would be some kind of Nephilim. And remember, Goliath had gene ties to the Nephilim kind of pool. So I want to summarize here, get to my main points. UFOs and abductions seem to be a real phenomenon scientifically. You're going to talk to a scientist, a secular scientist, they'll tell you that it's a real phenomenon. They're not going to tell you there's an alien, maybe, and they're not going to tell you it's really an abduction on a spaceship, but they will tell you there are real things scientifically. If we follow data and science, it's happening. There's also a biblical case for alien, again, quote-unquote alien encounters. You can call them angels if it makes you feel better. I use alien as kind of a trigger word. And these aliens or spirits are higher than our space and time domain. Remember that time thing again. We're stuck in that time track, and they're in a different domain. They're not in eternity where God is. God is the most high God. Remember, he's in the highest dimension. He is the most high God, the most powerful God. But they seem to be outside of our world because I don't see angels walking around every day. They must live in a higher realm than we live in. And remember again that the good ones won't ever deceive you. So do not go out looking into the skies for aliens, because the ones you find are the ones you don't want to find. So yeah, do not go looking for them. There's a lot of demonic activity going on there. And the good news is Christians usually see a lot less of these. You'll find out a lot of them are not Christians, probably because of this. You can and the ones that have kind of talked them away with the power of Jesus. They'll use that. But remember, the good ones won't deceive you. And if you see an alien, a good one, they're not even going to tell you. They're going to look just like a human, just like Hebrews 13 said. Then understand those who belong to Christ will be, in my opinion, abducted, right? Like Enoch was, like Elijah was. It's called the rapture. Some people believe it, some people don't. I definitely believe it, and I believe there's a lot of evidence for it, a lot of scriptural pattern evidence. Like I said, Enoch is one here. But when you use the term abduction, we would be abducted, if you could consider that. So wrap your mind around that, but you have to accept Jesus Christ. We are not the low vibrating people. We'd be the higher vibrating people. But again, the deception will tell you that we are the lower ones, and I think that's going to be part of the explanation for a lot of this. But if you accept Jesus Christ today, if you haven't, you'd be considered unsealed. And I tell people, think of it as an envelope. An envelope's not sealed, it's open. That's why demons can possess open, unsealed people. If you're a believer in God, I think demons can mess with you. I don't think they can possess you because you are sealed. Just like when you seal an envelope with a seal, you can't get in there and put another letter in. It's sealed, right? So think of it, when you are sealed with the Holy Spirit, anybody that's sealed with the Holy Spirit will be abducted by God, just like Enoch was. And that would be considered the rapture. So if you're sealed of the Holy Spirit in your envelope of a body, so to speak, you will be taken. Anybody that does not have the Holy Spirit sealed inside of them would be left here. So if you believe the gospel, you'll go into the greatest abduction of all time, in my opinion. And that's how I'm going to kind of end this here with a lot of wild stuff going on. I had to put the Kevin Hart one up there because that's probably what more of you guys are thinking, more than the lower guy. Yeah. What questions do you have? And what are your thoughts? And I know most of you guys are probably, the Kevin Hart up there. But yeah, that's probably one of the most strangest presentations you'll ever see in the church. I'm glad Pastor Brad let me come out here and give this. But does anybody have any questions, thoughts, or feedback for me or Pastor Brad or anything here? Yeah, go ahead. That's a fantastic question. Why would they be in a craft? And one of the theories is when you take on a physical body. So I do believe, and it goes another thing, ghosts. I think ghosts are very similar to aliens. And ghosts are basically spirits that can appear without being in an aircraft. But there is a potential, we believe, that so for example, in Genesis 6, they might have had to take an aircraft because if you're going to take on a human form and you're going to procreate, because remember, the Bible, people get really upset with this whole concept because they say, wait a minute, the Bible says we're going to be like the angels in heaven. We won't be able to marry and have children. So they couldn't have had children. They could have if they took on a human body, right? So, and that was their punishment. They left this glorious estate Jude talked about. They left the higher realms to come live on the earth because they were fascinated with women, and that was their big deal. So if they were going to come down and procreate, they could not have their angelic bodies. They would actually have to give their bodies up for a human form. If they shapeshift, they'd have to shift into what we have, and we know that we, might have trouble dipping in. So there's a potential, just like we would need an airplane. If I'm in the sky, I need an airplane to come land. They potentially would need some kind of craft that they would have a higher knowledge of possibly building. So that's why we believe that the UFOs could potentially be. And the only reason I say it, I would write off UFOs completely if I didn't have the Ezekiel wheel story. So we know that Ezekiel saw even godly beings, and we know that it was a positive interaction, and they were in these wheels within a wheel, which sounds a lot like UFOs. So is it a potential that and maybe they don't even need to have human bodies, maybe that's what they need, and every being's different. So again, we just think of ourselves as humans, but spirit beings, there's very different ranks, thrones, powers, dominions, gods, princes, and angels. So there's a chance that some of them can maybe just appear kind of like ghosts do. without this, and then there may be some that need some kind of craft to enter into our world, kind of like as in Rome, if I'm gonna have to live like a human kind of thing. But that's a really great question. That's one that I actually asked myself. Why would these UFOs not just be complete deception? But there's a chance that when they interact, dip in, dip out, they might need these aircraft to take their more physical bodies, because now they're living in the physical realm. They'll have to live by physical law as long as they're in those physical bodies until they took their hyperdimensional. And when I say hyperdimension, it just means above our realm, our spiritual, or the spiritual realm. So that was a great question. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Mike. Yeah. I will clear the air. Mike wants me to clear the air. There is a sons of Seth theory. So if you go back and read Genesis 6, there are some people that say the sons of God was just another term, another way to say that there was this line of Seth, and it's talking about two different bloodlines. There is a belief, just like there's people, I talked about the rapture tonight, there might be people in this room that don't even believe in that. That's okay. As long as you believe that Jesus died, and he was, virgin birth, died and resurrected, all those things, you're good, right? But there's going to be people that will disagree. And if you trace it back historically, because I did this, right? I actually, before I ever started telling people about this weird stuff, I wanted to be like a scientist to make sure I had data to back it up, okay? So there is a sons of Seth theory, but if you look when it originated, and you can believe it if you want, it originated with like St. Thomas Aquinas and Augustine era. And the reason they say they did this, they said that the old theory was just a little too crazy, a little far-fetched, and they didn't believe that people would take the Christian faith seriously. If you follow it back, they believe that's where the theory came from. And the reason I also say that is because I have the complete writings of Flavius Josephus. And if you read Flavius Josephus' writings, or any of the authors that were back in the 1st century time or BC, they all stick to this Jewish story that there were these angelic beings that came down. But Mike is right. There is a theory that this is completely bogus, and that was just it was two lines of humanity. But I believe there's a lot of truth to it. And I can do a whole other study. Some people in the room know if you actually go back to the ancient Jewish writings, they had a different kind of understanding of Christianity, how the thing came to be. So we believe the Garden of Eden, it's all correct. They all agree the Garden of Eden was the first sin. That's where sin entered. That was the first rebellion. But then the ancient Jews believed there was two more rebellions. Genesis 6 was the next rebellion. That was when the angels and the humans, and there's always a spiritual and a humanity aspect to this. In Genesis 3, there was Satan. He was a spiritual figure rebelling against God, and there was Eve and Adam rebelling against God in the human form. Then you go to Genesis 6, the second rebellion. You had the spirits leaving the first estate, and you had the human women agreeing to relationships with these people. That was the second rebellion. The third rebellion was Genesis 10 and 11, the Tower of Babel, they believed. And they believed this is what set up the whole world to be the way it is. They said this is when that the people were scattered according to the number of the sons of God, B'nai Ha-Elohim again. In Deuteronomy 32, if you look at the ESV, it's how it's translated. And they believed, the ancient Jews believed that every nation that wasn't Israel was ruled by an evil spirit being God, and Yahweh was ruling Israel, and the entire war today is based on these three rebellions. The world's destroyed because of all these things, and today the battle still is the Battle of Babel continuing on, where the Gentile gods are trying to win over souls of humanity and take them from Yahweh, and Yahweh's whole plan is to re-inherit, remember he told Abraham this, to re-inherit all the world through this one nation. You have to remember that Abraham was actually technically a Gentile before he was even a Jew, because he was from Ur, the Chaldeans, and Haran and all that. So, but that is a great point. Mike is correct. You don't have to completely go with me on Genesis 6. Just as if you go by the ancient beliefs, that's what they originally believed, and it changed over time to believe that they did more studies, and maybe it was the sons of Seth. So that is a good point. Yeah, Jasmine. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so high. It's like you probably actually heard. I mean, actually, it's funny because I was playing the theremin, and they're one of the most popular theremin songs. There's not many of them. There's a song called "Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys, and we all heard that one, right? So "Good Vibrations." That whole concept comes from this. And by the way, it's an ancient concept of vibrations, and I'm really into science, so it made a lot of sense to me after a while studying this. So there's low vibrations and high vibrations, and actually everything in the world is vibrating. Even this solid thing right here, the solid stand, is not solid at all. if you zoomed in scientifically, this is all vibrating. It's vibrating at a lower level. Higher rates, it moves faster. That's what heat does, right? That's why ice freezes, lower vibration. When it melts, water is a higher vibration. So there's low vibrations and there's high vibrations. So everything is vibrating. And I do believe there's a lot of truth to it. So when we pray, when it says keep your thoughts on things above, not on below, when you think about worldly things and you're caught up in the world and the things that give you pleasure in this world, you're actually lowering your vibration in a bad way. When you think to God, when you pray to God, when you're reading your Bible, when you're thinking about Christ, you're actually elevating your vibration. It's why you feel closer when you start praying and talking to God regularly. I believe there's some physical, scientific truth to it. New Age stuff, I do believe that's real. I believe you can use crystals to manipulate it. I have friends that do this, and it is very true. It's very possible, very similar to a form of magic, to manipulate the physical world with vibrations. And a lot of crystals or stones are what's called amplifiers. And they'll use, and I can give you a little bit, I won't go too far on this, but they'll use amplifiers. So, for example, the crystal citrine, it's an orange, looks like quartz. If you carry it around, it's supposed to amplify all the good, positive vibrations to bring higher vibrations into your world. And it might work, but it's not the way to go about that. The Bible says you can raise your vibration by asking God, right? And I kind of think of it like this. It's kind of like skipping the prayer part and saying, I'm just going to manipulate the world around me. So my son, Roscoe, if he said, hey, Dad, can I jump off the roof? I'd say no, right? That's not in your best interest. If he didn't ask me, he would just jump off. He would just do it. You just jump off the roof. But he asks me, and I look out for him, and I say no to him sometimes to when he wants to manipulate the world around him because it's not in his best interest. It's the same thing with God. But if you don't listen to God and you start manipulating the world around you with magic, witchcraft, these things that actually really work, you could walk yourself into some really, really bad situations. But I do believe there's actually even a biblical context to this. So if you look at, so there's high vibrations, low vibrations. If you look at the light spectrum, how you see light is actually based on vibration. This is what you guys are most familiar with. So you know the rainbow, right? Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. What you're doing is you're actually starting at the lowest vibrating frequency, and you're moving all the way up to the highest frequency. All right, think about this. What's the first color in a rainbow? Shout it out. What's the first color? Red, okay? So red is the lowest vibration. What's the highest color? What's the last color in the rainbow? Violet, purple. You've got it, purple. So the lowest is red, and the highest is purple. Do you ever think about this? When Jesus came to die for us, his blood was red. He took a low state to save us. When he arrives, when he goes back to heaven, he is a king. And what color is for kings? Purple, the highest vibrating color. If you look up scientifically, these are literally the vibrating colors. And by the way, these are not the only, this is what's so great about science. It proves God. When you start to really dive into this, it'll really prove God, because you'll say, well, are there any colors like lower than red or higher than violet? And you'll say, yeah, infrared and ultraviolet. That's literally what it means, by the way. It's, below red, we can't see it. Or above violet, I can't see it. But it's above violet, it's ultraviolet. It's below red, it's below red. So we know there are actually frequencies. X-rays are a frequency not in your light spectrum. That's why we cannot see X-rays, right? That's why we can't see these things, because they are at a frequency that our eyes cannot attain, because we live in 4 dimensions. This is also why when you learn about the temple of God and they start, saying sapphire, when you heard the beryl, when you start to hear these gemstones, the reason these are explained is because it's not purple, it's not green, it's something higher that your human eyes can't see, and only could you see in a glorified body in the spiritual dimension. So that was Yep, so music is the same thing. Musics are played at frequencies, and frequencies are hertz. Those are also vibrations, and there's a lot of stuff into that. I studied that as well. So like 432 hertz is what the perfect vibration of music is. And music, so think about this. Music is vibrations, right? It's sound vibrations. Why does music make us feel good? We don't even understand. But you put on a song, everybody has one song, whether it's a hymn or something on the radio, that makes you just feel good and you get really excited. Why? It's just a bunch of noises. What it is vibrations, and people talk about sonic geometry. Sonic meaning sound, geometry meaning shapes. So when you play music, you're actually playing art. It's actually vibrating, it's symmetrical shapes hitting your eardrum in beautiful ways, just like when I look at a painting of a lake and I'm just like, wow, I feel so calm, I want that in my house. It's because it is moving me in a beautiful way. Music is a beautiful vibration to your body, and you can sense that. That's why when you hit a bad chord, you go, ugh, and I play the guitars like that, and you hit something, you can feel it. You're like, oh, I don't like that. Because it was not a symmetrical shape, sonically. It was not a sonic, symmetrical shape. So when you really understand this, it starts to make sense. But yeah, music is very similar, in that, and everything's vibration when you study science. Even rocks and concrete, solid, their vibrations. So that's why a lot of magic will involve frequencies. The solfeggio frequencies apparently come, they say, from number 7, but I don't completely trust it because they go by number verses, and verses weren't numbered. It used to just be on scrolls. So when you see numbered, like, verse 17, and all these things, those are just, we use those as like kind of addresses. I call them like Bible addresses, but when they take solfeggio frequencies, they blow it out of proportion. But frequencies are real, and just like your radio station. I do believe when you start to get into the Bible and you start to read, you're going to start to find other Christians around you in the crowd, because frequencies, actually, I do believe there's some truth to it. Frequencies unite and they align, just like radios. So if I want to listen to like 94KX, 94.1, I have to have a receiver that will only receive anything vibrating around me at 94.1 hertz. By the way, it's in this room right now. We just can't see it, right? If you said, oh, hey, there's a really good song on 97.9. You got to get up to 97.9. There's an awesome classic rock song, Eric. You're going to love it. I now have to, what do I have to do? I have to raise my vibration. I have to take my receiver and raise the vibration from 94.1 vibrations a second to 97.9. That's what your radio stations are, by the way. So now if you are on the same vibration as me and you have a receiver in your house that is receiving at 97.9, we're on the same wavelength, right? That's where that comes from, by the way. We're on the same wavelength. We're receiving the same thing. But if I change my station, I go lower. I start thinking about the world. I don't go to church anymore. I don't read my Bible. I don't pray. I'm going to tune into a radio station that other people are on that you don't want to be on. So all the science is pointing to a lot of spiritual truths. All I'm telling you is don't take it into your own hands. Why, I do have friends that can practice magic and do these things. They've had some pretty wild things happen. I completely believe they have. It's also dangerous, and a lot of them have got themselves into very dangerous situations that I've actually prayed over and helped them with spirits before. And that stuff with the spirits is very real. Ghosts, all that stuff, demons, haunting, very real. The Bible says do not mess with it. It is dangerous. You are not smart enough to have any power over it. You need God to do the work for you. But all those frequency vibrations, I'm glad you asked about that. But next time you think about Jesus' blood being red, think about his lowly state first. Remember, that's the lowest vibrating color. And when he ascends to glory in his majesty and he's in purple, that's the highest form. So he went from low to high. So even scripturally, it's backing up what science is going to tell us in the 20th century. The Bible had already showed us in scripture there. Any other question or, yeah. Evil and wicked. Yeah. Yeah. No, so that's a good question. I'm glad you said that. So there was actually a human. Right. Correct. Right. 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 Yep. So I agree with you. Humans are humans, and that whole human bloodline still runs. Noah's bloodline was never infiltrated. Enoch, that whole bloodline was never infiltrated there. Sons of God, a lot of people get really caught up on Bene Ha Elohim in the Hebrew there. And there's the term, I think actually like Adam and Jesus are the two people that are considered the sons of God literally. They're the only ones that didn't have a human father, where we're the sons of Adam then, right? So the sons of Adam comes from Adam's lineage. Right. So you have to look at the term. So sons of God, again, I know you're saying there with sons, like there's no lineage of angels. But if you look at Jude, and this is what the ancient Jewish people believed, and that's why I said you don't even have to accept any of this stuff as truth. But where it comes from is Jude definitely alludes to these beings that left their habitation or their first estate. And for them to procreate, they would have had to take on a human body. So I agree. I don't think angels can marry or anything like that. Right. Right, and I do agree with you there. There's probably there's no angels, and actually the ones, if you take it to be angels like I do, it says they're chained up in gloomy darkness, and they don't ever get to paradise. And that's why even the ancient Jewish people believed, the ones who believed these things that you might disagree with, believed that when these things died, they couldn't have went to paradise. They couldn't even and Sheol was really just a place of the dead. They said that's where everybody went back then. They talk about that, and that some people will say that it wasn't finished and released until Jesus died on the cross, and then things change, and you can debate all that kind of stuff. But I see what you're saying there. Redemption for humanity. Right. Right. I would, yep, I would agree. All right, so Pastor Brad, you want to jump in? Yes. Right. Yeah, gap theory is the Genesis 1 to 2, where people say the universe is billions of years old, which is definitely theory, and there's really not a lot of proof. You have to jump to a lot of assumptions there. Right. What's that? Correct. Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe they don't even need one, and that would be part of the deception there. But I do know if you go to Deuteronomy 32, if you study Deuteronomy 32 in the actual Hebrew, it's referring to these beings that existed even around the Tower of Babel era. It's a reference to, if you go to Deuteronomy 32, it's a reference to the Tower of Babel, and sons of God is used. And that's why I always say B'nai Ha-Elohim, because the Hebrew things are different. That's why some translations will even get it wrong and say the sons of Israel. So if you actually look at a KJV, actually, this will make a lot of people mad, but if you look at KJV, the translation in Deuteronomy 32:8 will say sons of Israel. But if you go to the Hebrew, it says B'nai Ha-Elohim. And B'nai Ha-Elohim is definitely God and not Israel. And Israel had not even been created until after the Tower of Babel. Sure. You could argue that we had sinned the entire time. Right. Yeah, no, there's definitely an increased wickedness here. And I see there's a lot of people that say exactly what you say. They say this is nonsense. It was the sons of Seth. We're going a little bit too out of lines. I'm just saying the etymology of all this, where this all came from, and where Jude references kind of what he's saying. It's these scriptures of Enoch that were, and these whole books were all about. If you read the books of Enoch, which it's not canon, so you can't take it to be 100% true. But you can use the pieces that are used in the New Testament and saying, well, these portions at least must be true. And when you follow Jude's thing back, he'll take you back into these really weird stories about this. And some people, like I said, Augustine and Aquinas rejected it too. You'd be with St. Augustine, who said, that's a little too bizarre for me. I don't think that's happening. But I'd encourage you to be very careful not to, for at least sons of God, I see where you're coming from, but sons of God, you can get things lost in translation, which is why it's really important sometimes to study Hebrew and Greek, because there's different versions, like love. If you say love, there's different kinds of versions of love and things like that. So you study that. First mention. Right. So, yeah, go ahead, Jasmine. Yeah. Yeah. unattainable for them. Yeah. Right. Yep. And you can even see, so, and I tell people that a lot. So that's a really good question. So people want to know, and I love knowing things, but when you obtain knowledge so much to where, kind of like what we're talking about with these, I think even when you're talking about vibrations, if you really are starting to study vibrations and you're trying to get the entire reverse engineering what God did so you can manipulate it, I think it's once you start to try to manipulate and use knowledge kind of outside the Bible to start manipulate things to your own will, I'd say you've gone too far. And like a lot of these things, that's why I always tell people anything outside, I mean, you can debate all kinds of theology. I mean, there's even people, and the one thing you can't debate, people will even debate if Mary was a virgin. And those are things you can't debate. You can't debate, because once you say that Mary wasn't a virgin or that Jesus didn't get back from the dead, now we just believe in a different religion. Now you've really like just completely changed. But if you stay within, that's why the creed, the Apostles' Creed, you stay in that framework. As long as you agree on that, there's going to be a lot of disagreements around there. Just like I believe in the rapture, some people that I know that are really good friends with don't even believe in the kingdom, let alone a rapture. They say the kingdom's not even real. The kingdom is allegory. And we could go round and round and round, and I've done it with people, and it's just not worth it. But at some point, you get to the point where, what does this knowledge even do for us? And yes, we just say, it doesn't even matter who's right or who's wrong. It doesn't even matter if aliens are real. It doesn't matter if the sons of God were really aliens. They might have really been humans, and it won't affect our salvation, if I'm right or wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And if you go back to first century Jewish writings, and it's extra biblical, like he's kind of pointing out, this is not in the Bible, but they go further on. If you read the Tower of Babel and Flavius Josephus, the reason he wrote his books was to teach the Romans what the Jews believed, by the way. He was captured. He was a traitor. He traded over to the Roman Empire when they took over Israel, and he was trying to teach them about what Israel believed. So whether they believed, and the Romans thought this was insane too. But Josephus told them, if you go in, not only did they believe, and again, this is all conjecture, not only were they, trying to be like God, they say that they were trying to build a tower so high that God could never flood them out again, and they were going to try to access some kind of what we would call a Stargate today, and trying to access the higher realm because Nimrod wanted to fight God, is what the Jews believed. That Nimrod built this tower to protect his people from another flood, that he was mad at God, and he was going to enter the higher dimensions and fight him. That's what the ancient Jews believed. That is extra biblical. That's definitely, there's no scripture to back that up. But if you read, and the reason I do this only is because what were the original beliefs before? Because I am somebody that believes that I don't think a new idea and a new interpretation comes out in the year 1500. If you tell me some new idea that somebody came up with in the year 1500 of why things are the way they are, and I have no evidence of any believer ever interpreting it that way, it just can't be true, because God says he was done giving revelation ever since the Bible was written. So if you can't find it in the Bible, and somebody's saying, I have this new way, it's never been done before, and here's the new way to write it and interpret it, that would be incorrect. But I do go back only because this is definitely, even if you don't believe, this is definitely what the Jews believed according to all, and Josephus is just one example. There are many others that believed this as well. Whether it was their myths, it could be, there are Jewish myths, by the way, kind of like what he's referring to. It says, don't follow silly myths and weird genealogies. There's a scripture that says that. And I think it's warning you, in these kind of conversations, don't go so deep that you're going to argue over genealogies and these myths that the Jews created, because they did create some myths, we would have to say, or it wouldn't have been written about. So some things they said had to have been wrong. But when you get back to these interpretations, you don't find the Genesis 6, them being human until after Christ is gone. There's no writings of that. Yeah, Pastor Brad. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That never existed. Yeah. That's a great question, and I think it would kind of go back to Dr. Jacques Vallée, and Dr. Jacques Vallée was one of the scientists, computer scientists, who believed that he was a computer scientist, and he believed there was a lot of psychic stuff happening. There's even a guy, I didn't mention his name, Terrence McKenna. He was into a lot of wrong ideas, but he was one that was even, the science community hated him. They called him a pseudoscientist. He was the one that kind of said, these aliens that we're seeing, these beings, they're actually in our minds. There's actually nothing up there in the sky. They're projecting into your mind. So I would kind of use that avenue to say these kind of weird things that they're false memory, whether they're false memories or whatever, they can really get people into thinking that things did or didn't happen, and they can manipulate a lot of things. Some things I just can't explain. Like some of the weird things, like I'm sure you guys seen the fruit of the loom Mandela effect. Like I always thought there was that cornucopia or whatever behind it, and well, like that's the weirdest one. I don't know how to explain it. We do know from science as well. So if you do study human psychology, ourselves, there's actually a really good chance that you in your lifetime have a memory of your childhood that never happened, by the way. There's a very, very good chance, because what had happened that they found out is over time when you share stories with people, when you retell it, you refragment stories over and over again where you can actually believe that you saw something or somebody got hit by a car or something like this, all because the human mind is it can be very warped, and that's why for a long time a lot of these kind of phenomenons were disregarded, because like the human mind can do anything. It wasn't until the reason that the people are starting to take this stuff seriously is because we're having a lot more physical evidence of these kind of things. But yeah, going back to your idea, Pastor Brad, I think it would be some kind of other psychic attack on a lot of people, or some kind of psychic war. That's beyond us. But some of the things, I'll just be honest, I can't even explain them all. So it's a good one. Anybody else? Yeah, Mal. I've heard of her. Oh yeah. Right. Yep. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mallory, because that's another weird thing. In the Bible actually will even say that the beginning and the end are simultaneous. The end is already done. The beginning and the end is all the same, and we don't understand because inside of space and time there has to be a before and after. But imagine to God, and I was actually having this conversation before with somebody. Imagine like there's a big debate on like when we die, only to us do we die at different times. But some people are, and this is conjecture and speculation. But there's conjecture that according to God, it's all simultaneous and everything, because once you get outside of time, you can no longer say before or after any longer. So there is no before or after for God. God sees it as a creation. The way I explain this to people, by the way, is like movies. Okay, so we're all very familiar. We watch movies, right? But when I put on that movie on Netflix, it's not writing itself. The end was given to me with the beginning. The beginning and the end were a package deal. Now, I can float up and down and back that thing, right? But and it looks like, when you're watching that movie, it looks like before and after, but you got those frames simultaneously, meaning that if you know the movie very well, I could tell you in the future, oh, hey, I'm a big Back to the Future fan. Hey, Back to the Future, he's going to go back, and it's going to be the Twin Pine Mall. He's going to turn it to Lone Pine Mall. He's going to go back to 1955, and then back to a different 85. And you could say, well, how do you know? We didn't even get to, it just started. I'd say, well, the end is already done. The end and the beginning are all the same to me. I know because I'm outside of this thing. I'm not living inside this movie. I'm outside of the movie, and I can see the beginning and the end. And it's really hard. Once you start getting into hyperdimensions, theoretical physicists will tell you only mathematically can we understand some of these concepts, because you actually would need a hyperdimensional thought process to grab and grasp these ideas. So that's so true. And what you said with hypnosis and stuff, a lot of times spirits will channel through the subconscious, and we run off even scientists will tell you, we think we run off the conscious memory, but actually we're all subconscious. We're all running a program, the one called a human biocomputer. That's why sometimes if you don't think about it and you're off work and you're going to go somewhere else, but you accidentally drive to work, why? Because you were programmed, because your subconscious has programmed you, and you were driving there because you did not consciously steer away from your subconscious. And the subconscious is where everything happens. It's why people say that when you go to sleep, you can listen to tapes of a language, and over some time you might actually be familiar with the language and never took lessons, but it was programmed in your mind. So subconscious stuff gets really weird, and I do believe spirits use the subconscious a lot of the times to access thoughts and access humans. So that's true too. Anybody else before we? Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah. Yes. So why am I telling you this stuff about, why does Eric want you to believe in aliens? And I don't even want you to believe in aliens per se. But the thing is, I do believe it's being used and going to be more heavily used as long as the earth continues on. You're going to see these things in the news that are going to tell you that people saw 8-foot aliens and we have record of it, and they're going to tell you all these weird things that aren't true. It is all deception, and I believe we are being set up to be deceived because as time goes on, the father of lies would love to continue to lie to us and get people to believe things. So what I'm here to do is really to tell you, if you hear any of your friends or neighbors talking about aliens, I would ask you to take them to a biblical standpoint and kind of say, there's no proof. I'm telling you, there's no proof they're on other planets, but there's proof that weird things happen. Maybe you don't believe in the Genesis 6 stuff, but you at least believe that the angel of Gabriel showed up, and you believe that Joshua encountered the angel of the Lord, and you know weird things happen, and you know there's evil out there, and spirits are deceptive. So I would gear you up to, and the whole thing is, the reason I really want to do it on this topic is because aliens, I'm telling you, is only going to become more mainstream. You're going to start to hear the United States government come out with it. You're going to start to hear them do programs to study it. They're going to start doing Congress hearings. If anybody know who Marco Rubio is, he ran for president years ago. If you look into him, he believes he's getting a lot of reports, and they're going to take it to Congress, and you're going to see this stuff on the news. And then what's going to happen one day is people are going to tell you, if these aliens are here and we have proof they're here, your Bible must be false. Because why didn't Jesus die for them? And you're going to start to hear all these weird things, and what they want you to do is what they prove, quote unquote, prove that we have a UFO saucer, that we have aliens, that the Bible is no longer true. So the reason I'm telling you this is to take them to show them scripturally how it would make sense interdimensionally, but interplanetary, it's just a lie, it's just more deception, and remind people you don't have to lose your faith over the fact that there's alien sightings. You don't have to, because I know so many people that have told me, if we ever find out aliens, I think I'd have to give up the faith because it never said that Jesus died for aliens. And it would say the same thing, well, he didn't die for angels. He didn't die for them. And that's probably why they're upset, that he didn't die for the demons. So it's the same thing, just different language, and semantics and wording is really important. So when people say aliens, I know them as angels, and I know a lot of them are bad, and a lot of them are manipulative, and the good ones won't ever try to trick me, the Bible tells me. So that is the big reason I'm telling you this, is to stick to the gospel, stick to the truth. There's going to be a lot of lies coming out of what's really happening, and you can go on the internet and find whatever you want to believe. You can find a theory for it, by the way. If you want to believe, you can even go into the things where you want to believe that magic and God and Reiki and all this stuff can work together. You'll find people that will tell you that. But what you have to do is go to the Scripture, stay in the Scripture, and just remind everybody you talk to, especially other believers, that this is not out of the question. You're not surprised, and it would make sense that there would be some kind of a deception to this level. If you were like me and believe in a rapture, it would make sense as a really good deceptive way of explaining away such a weird occurrence of everybody in this room, or most of the people in this room, disappearing. It'd be really hard to explain it unless you had a plan. So that's what I was here to tell you, is this is possible. You might disagree with everything I said up here. You might not even believe in a rapture. You might not even believe in Jesus as being God per se. But I'm here to tell you that I believe it's true. I believe the Bible's 100% true. And I believe, from my standpoint, that biblically, it's a deception that's been coming since the beginning of time. And it will continue on, and it's only going to get worse. It will no longer be a tinfoil hat topic, I'm telling you. You're going to hear your coworkers and neighbors talking about aliens over the next 5 years. I can just almost guarantee that.